I'd like to go through some administrative items. Please turn off or silence all electronic communication devices. If you would like to follow along with today's proceedings, there are agendas available in the back of the room. There are established time limits for testimony on hearing officer agenda items. Petitioners have up to 10 minutes and up to 5 minutes for a rebuttal period. Respondents have up to 10 minutes each. All others will have 2 minutes. Thank you. And there is no ceding of time. Anyone wishing to testify today on any agenda item, and that includes the public comment period, will need to fill out a speaker card and submit that to staff. There is an audio and video recording being made of today's proceedings, and it is generally available from DCBA staff within 10 working days. Is there anyone present here today who needs translation services? And you have a translator here, correct? Thank you very much. The general procedure for today's agenda items is as follows. First, staff will make a brief presentation. Then I will ask the petitioner to speak, followed by the respondents and other members of the public. If necessary, I will then hear rebuttals by the petitioner. Final decisions made by hearing officers on landlord petitions which do not assess an administrative penalty, and final decisions on all tenant petitions are final and are not subject to further appeal at the county. If you intend to testify today on any agenda item, and that includes the public comment period, please stand at this time to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may be seated. I am taking the agenda items in order, and we have finished with items 2 and 3, and we are currently on agenda item number 4, which is case RSQ1913512. Ms. Lewis, have you completed your presentation for item 4?
Yes.
Mr. Williams, it appears that you are here for item 4. Is that correct? And my understanding is that Mr. Viramontes is here for item 7. Is that correct? All right, thank you. The hearing is open for item 4, and I call Mr. William Williams. Please come on down to the speaker's table here. Take a seat wherever you're comfortable. There is a timer on the table in front of you. When your time to speak starts, the green light will come on. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will come on. And when your time has expired, the red light will come on. So when you see that yellow light, if you're still speaking, just wrap up your comments. 10 minutes is a long time, though, and you don't need to use all of it. I just ask that before you begin speaking, just state your name for the record. Please go ahead, sir.
William Earl Williams.
Thank you, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm here on behalf of the landlord management company. They corrected my rent and whatnot, but I was served again 3 days ago with a 3-day notice when I had paid my rent for January. But in this 3-day notice right here, they were saying that I owe $704 still for this month. So knowing that I had paid my rent for this month. So I pretty much explained to him that, why are you giving me a 3-day notice? But out of all the tenants that had filed a petition here or whatever, they're all gone. So it's like 11 vacant units there. But it seems like now that he's harassing me for some apparent reason. So one of the maintenance workers told me that he told him to put this on my door. For what apparent reason, I don't know. But I corrected, I talked to the office, so she said, well, we made a mistake. Well, how could you make a mistake like this with my name, everything on here? Which I didn't understand. So still, the 3-day notice, he said, well, just disregard that. Okay, I need it in writing. Why would I just disregard a 3-day notice that you sent with my name, everything addressed to my unit, to me? So that's pretty much where I'm at right now with him.
All right, Mr. Williams. My understanding is, I received a memo from DCBA staff that you had been returned all of the overpayment that you'd been paying over the past. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So this sounds like something new.
This is something new.
And this is actually an issue that is outside of the rent stabilization ordinance.
Okay.
The petition that you were part of was, hey, he charged me too much. They charged me too much.
Okay.
I should get that back. Absolutely, you've been paid back for that.
Correct.
The 3-day notice and the assertion by the landlord that you owe over $700 for January, that's an issue that you'll need to address through DCBA staff in a different way. It won't be through this procedure, because this is rent stabilization. The eviction notice is separate.
Okay.
I don't get to rule on that, other than I completely agree with you. I wouldn't just take your word on, oh, forget it. Yeah, I think that, I don't know if perhaps a phone call from DCBA staff would be helpful to say, if you really want trouble, go ahead with trying to evict somebody who's already paid, but not knowing the whole story or what their situation is, or if their right hand didn't know what their left hand was doing and somebody sent out a notice, I can't comment any further on it. I can say that your petition for noncompliance for the rent overpayment, I need to rule on that, and I will rule on that today, that basically I will deny your petition because he paid up. He paid you everything you owed. So
Right.
there's no longer a ruling on that.
Okay. And then I just want to say that furthermore, that out of all the tenants that were there, that time is up, huh? Yeah, that all the tenants
Go ahead.
that were there, I'm the only one that's still left. So this is why I feel that it's a retaliatory type issue that's going on, because everyone else has moved out. Like maybe 13 tenants have moved out as a result of this. 10% increase, 60, day notice, even though it was invalid. But I'm the only one that's still there because I paid my rent. I continue to pay my rent through June, November, and on to up until this day. But I don't know, like I said, I'll take another avenue.
Well, check with DCBA staff. They will be able to help you. And it sounds like, from what I recall, you had already provided documentation, that you kept documentation during the period that you were overpaying. And so keep doing that. Just paperwork, document everything.
Okay.
And you will, there shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you much.
You're welcome. Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add before I continue?
Not at this time.
All right, I am closing the public hearing. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states that the petitioner has a burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the landlord violated the interim rent stabilization ordinance, as the landlord has made the petitioner whole by returning the overpayment. The petition is moot. Therefore, I am denying petition for noncompliance, case RSQ 1913512. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and this item is concluded. Moving on to item 5. This is also a continued item. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
So this is for case number RSQ 1913263, which is Juan Santos versus Ebtem Agahi. This is a petition for noncompliance to request a reduction in rent in accordance with the allowable limit as established by the interim rent stabilization ordinance. The petitioner, Juan Santos, resides at the property located at 3955 Dozier Street, Los Angeles, California, 90063. The case was originally opened on the record on December 5th, 2019, and continued to a date certain of January 30th, 2020. We previously asked for a closure of the case, but we have received some additional information from both the landlord and the tenant that requires further review and analysis, and so we are asking that the case is continued to February 27th, 2020.
All right. The hearing for this item is open. However, I've not received any documents to review. I do not have any speaker cards for this item. To provide staff additional time for review and analysis of documentation, item 5, case RSQ 1913263, is continued to 27 February 2020. Right, item 6, please, Ms. Lewis.
Okay. That is for case number RSQ 1913760. This is Chemo Ray versus Trayvon and Orinda SB. This is also a petition for noncompliance to request a reduction in rent in accordance with the allowable limit as established by the interim rent stabilization ordinance. The petitioner, Chemo Ray, resides at the property, which is located at 4521 East San Vicente Street in Compton, California, 90221. This case was originally heard on the record on December 9th, 2019, and continued to a date certain of January 30th, 2020. Since then, the tenant has been returned their proper overpayment, and the rent has been adjusted in accordance with the ordinance. After further review and analysis of the case, the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs is requesting closure of the case on the record.
Thank you. The hearing for this item is not open. However, the petition was not withdrawn, correct?
That's correct.
I am opening the hearing for this item. There are no speakers for this item. Therefore, I am closing the public hearing for this item. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states that the petitioner has a burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the landlord violated the interim rent stabilization ordinance, as the landlord has made the petitioner whole by returning all overpayments. The petition is moot. Therefore, I am denying the petition for noncompliance, case RSQ 1913760. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and this item is concluded. Moving on to item 7, which is also an open hearing. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
Thank you. So this is for the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for relief from moratorium. And the case number is RSQ 1907874. The petitioner is Laura Polito, who is the landlord, and the respondents are those located at 744 through 746.5 Southwoods Avenue in Los Angeles, California, 90022. The petition date was filed on July 11, 2019. As I mentioned, it's a petition for relief from moratorium, and the landlord in this case is requesting to increase rent in excess of the allowable limit as established by the ordinance, and also pass through costs associated with completed capital improvements. The property is located in the unincorporated area of East Los Angeles, and it is a residential dwelling on a property with 2 or more units and built in 1955. So the key issues here in this case The 4 rental units on the property are currently rented out for a reported total of $4,870 monthly, and the petitioner is requesting a monthly increase of $205, so 4.21%, and a capital improvement pass-through. The petitioner has issued allowable increases for 2 of the 4 units per the interim rent stabilization ordinance. And the 2 units that she's issued the increases for are 744 and 746 South Woods Avenue at the property. So the following capital improvements were reported by the petitioner and also substantiated by DCBA. She did air conditioning replacements or installation, and also a vinyl plank flooring installation. And for the air conditioner, that was done for each of the units, but we're asking, but this is specific to 2 of the units, and then the vinyl plank flooring was done for 3 of the 4 units at the property. So DCBA received the following capital improvement expense related documents from the petitioner. We received a paid invoice from NRG that's related to the air conditioning, and it was for $26,278.38. We also received a council check from Brian Torres for the flooring for $3,890, and another one from Hernandez Carpet Brokers for $96.80. Okay, so as I mentioned, the air conditioner capital improvement applies to 2 of the 4 units. And the reason being is that at 1 of the units received its air conditioner installation prior to the implementation of the ordinance and prior to the base year, and the other unit had the tenant moved in after the installation of the air conditioner. So the rent should account for that. So the total amount paid, as I mentioned, was $26,278.35. The total allowed to be passed through in this case would be $17,606.49, and the total pass through per unit, so it will be the 2 units, is $8,803.25. For the flooring, that applies to 3 units, and it's $3,890 plus the $96.80, and then that's allowed to be passed through to 3 of the units, as she completed it for 3 of the units, for a total of $1,296.67, and then $32.27. So as I mentioned, the pass-through that should be allowed is for the air conditioner per unit is $8,803.25, and it's for an amortization period, so of 120 months. And that total monthly pass-through comes out to $73.36. For the flooring, we're asking for a pass-through of $1,296.67, and another $32.27, and the amortization period for that is 84 months. And then the total monthly pass-through would be $15.44, and then 38 cents. So in total, it would be a pass-through of about $89.18. That would go for the 84 months, and then the remainder would continue for the 120 months. So here we break down the total applicable costs divided by the affected units, divided by the amortization period to get the monthly pass-through. And then we break that down by our recommendation of no more than 50% of that being a pass-through to the tenant. So as you can see for the air conditioner, we're asking that $36.38 be recommended for a pass-through at the maximum. And for the flooring, we're asking for a maximum pass-through of $7.91. And those are monthly pass-throughs, those amounts that we just stated. So as I mentioned, this petitioner is also requesting for a permanent rent increase to occur. The capital pass-throughs, as I mentioned, have amortization periods of 120 months or 84 months, depending on what the work that was performed. So that'd be a temporary increase. So this is in reference to the permanent rent increase. So at this time, DCBA is lacking sufficient documentation related to the cost of the property insurance in the base year termite inspections that the petitioner claimed, as well as the Edison utilities. To review and determine the maintenance of net operating income between the base year and petition year, the petitioner must provide substantive documentation related to the reported income and expenses. This is how we determine a fair return or whether a permanent rent increase should occur. The petitioner reported the following operating expenses. Those were the property taxes, property insurance, water, electricity, termite protection, maintenance and repairs. We did receive documentation from the petitioner. However, as I stated, we were lacking property insurance from the base year. We're lacking termite inspection from the base year and the Edison utility in the base year. Specific to the property insurance, we did not have documentation to show us the amount of insurance that had been paid for the months through of September 2017 through July 2018. For the Edison payment history, we were lacking 6 months of that from September 2017 to February 2018. And then for the termite protection, the petitioner reported a $400 expense annually, but we have no documentation to substantiate that. And the documentation that we did receive reflects $0 payment. So as I stated before, in order to calculate the maintenance of net operating income and compare between the base year and the petitioner year, DCBA must receive substantive documentation. And due to that lack of substantive documentation, DCBA is unable to capture the petitioner's income and expenses accurately to go ahead and calculate out what that maintenance of net operating income is. And the inability to calculate the net operating income or maintenance of it between the 2 years prevents DCBA from making a recommendation for or against a fair return increase, so a permanent rent increase. So at this time, staff is recommending the following related to the interim rent stabilization ordinance petition for relief from moratorium, case number RSQ19-07874. We are asking for approval of the capital improvement pass-through. We're asking that only 50% of those costs be passed through to the tenants or affected tenants for a maximum of $36 and, give me 1 second, sorry. 68 cents for the air conditioner capital improvement and $7.91 for the flooring capital improvement. It shouldn't commence until the affected tenants are served a proper written notice, and the capital improvement related to the capital improvement pass-through related to the air conditioner shall not exceed 120 months. The capital improvement pass-through related to the flooring should not, of $7.91, shall not exceed 84 months. The capital improvement pass-throughs shall be listed as separate line items and not deemed as rent, and they should indicate an expiration date. The petitioner may increase rents by the allowable limit where allowed by the interim rent stabilization ordinance as well as the permanent rent stabilization ordinance, but capital improvements should not be calculated in the rent increase. So if the petitioner is increasing rents, it shouldn't be increased from that base rent amount plus the capital improvement amount. It should only include the base rent amount. The combined allowable increase in capital improvement pass-throughs shall not exceed 10% per year, and that may result in the petitioner not receiving the entire allowable increase in certain years, depending on what the allowable increase is. Or I'm sorry, allowable pass-through, depending on what the allowable increase is. And only the affected tenants may be charged for the pass-throughs, and the remaining tenants shall not receive a capital pass-through. And then, of course, the rental rate for the new vacancy should account for capital pass-throughs and may not be charged in addition to the listed rent. As to the permanent rent increase, DCBA is requesting a denial of the fair return increase, and it's because we do not have substantive documentation to make that determination whether or not that should occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I do have a question for you concerning the proposed 10% cap, which is a cumulative rent, the maximum 3% rent increase in addition to the capital improvement costs pass-through increase. If it were to exceed 10% in some year, what would be reduced? The 3% annual increase, or the how could you reduce the capital improvement increase?
So the landlord would still be able to take the allowable increase for the allowable limit under the rent stabilization ordinance. So if it was 8% in 1 year, then they should only take the remaining 2%. So whatever gets them to up to 10% is allowed under the ordinance, but it should always be a reduction against the capital improvement pass-through rather than the permanent rent increase.
So it would be perhaps 1 year they may only get a 1% permanent rent increase. They may not, it would always be taken from that maximum 3% annual rent increase, correct? Because the capital improvement, isn't that cost set?
It is a set cost, but they are allowed to take the allowable limit, and then they would have to reduce against the capital improvement. So that's why our findings are that, or our recommendations are that they may not get the entire capital improvement pass-through amount, depending on what the allowable increase is for that year.
So if they don't get the full capital improvement pass-through for a year, they are just out the amount of that capital improvement pass-through. Would they be able to go, instead of 120 months, would they be able to go 132 months to get the full 50% back, or not?
I think that would have to be determined on a case-by-case basis.
It seems like that's something that should be looked at, if there's a difference between them getting a return on their capital, the full 50% return on the capital improvement cost, or the 3% annual rent increase. It should be set. There should be some sort of a policy which would always stay, because then the landlord is not getting the 50% back. If they're still limited to only having a pass-through increase for, say, 120 months on the air conditioner, but they're not allowed to recoup that entire 50% cost from the tenant, then why would they? But they're still limited to 120 months. That doesn't seem fair. That if there's anything, they should be allowed to get that capital improvement pass through, that 50%, and there be an adjustment in the rent that they would be able to receive. Not that it come off the capital improvement, but that's just my thought on that. As long as there's a set policy, though, I think that would be easier to implement.
Okay.
County Council, do you have any thoughts on that?
I have nothing to add, Madam Hearing Officer. I do think a policy that is consistent would be advisable, but I'm sure that's something DCBA will look into.
Very well, thank you. Thank you on that, Ms. Lewis. We do have a speaker for this, but before we go on, ma'am, could you tell me what item you are here for? All right, very well. What I need to do is ask you to stand so that I can swear you in. Oh, that's fine then. Thank you very much. As a reminder, this public hearing is open, and I will call the speaker that I have one speaker card for, Mr. Alberto Viramontes. Señor Viramontes, you have up to 10 minutes.
Va a tener 10 minutos.
When your time starts, the green light will
Cuando
come
su
on, the
tiempo
timer.
Se inicie, se va a encender la luz verde.
When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light will come on.
Cuando tenga 30 segundos para que se acabe el tiempo, se va a encender la luz amarilla.
So when you see that light, please wrap up your comments.
Cuando mire la luz amarilla, si puede terminar sus comentarios.
And when the red light comes on, your time has expired.
Y cuando se encienda la luz roja, se acaba el tiempo.
You do not need to use the entire time.
No necesita usar el tiempo completo.
I ask before you begin
Antes que comience,
that you state your name for the record,
si puede decir por favor su nombre para el archivo.
and please remember to pause so that our interpreter can translate.
Y
Thank
si
you.
por favor pausa para que yo pueda traducir también.
Please go ahead.
Puede comenzar.
Alberto Viramontes, me llama Alberto Viramontes. La razón que quiero decir algo,
The reason why I want to say something,
creo que no encuentro la razón de estar aquí.
I don't find a reason to be here today.
Tengo que hacer arreglos en mi trabajo para estar aquí sin ser necesario.
I have to make arrangements at work to be here, and I don't find it necessary.
Yo estoy de acuerdo a la ley del control de rentas.
I'm in agreement with rent control law.
Si la señora Pulido me lleva una carta y me aumenta la renta,
If my landlord comes and gives me a notification to increase the rent,
yo nunca me voy a negar,
I'm never going to decline to pay,
siempre y cuando no esté arriba de la ley.
as long as it's not above what the law allows.
Y otra cosa que quiero decir también,
And another thing that I want to say as well,
la renovación que hizo, con todo respeto,
the renovations that she made, with all respect,
la renovación la hizo en el 744 y medio.
the renovations were done to the unit 744 and a half.
A mí me corresponde el aire acondicionado que también lo puso.
What was done to my unit was the air conditioning,
Que la cual agradezco mucho a ella. Muchas gracias por el aire acondicionado. Estamos más confortables, muy contentos.
and that I'm very thankful. We're more comfortable and happy.
Pero yo nunca me voy a negar de pagarles la renta de acuerdo a la ley del control de rey de California.
But I'm never going to decline to pay the rent according to what the law allows.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Viramontes. I appreciate it.
May I ask what unit he resides in?
His address is listed here as 744 on the speaker card.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ma'am, you're sure you don't want to speak? Okay, I'll say something. Okay, then once you finish speaking, I'll ask that you just fill out a speaker card once you. Oh, perfect, great, thank you. Thank you. Come on down. Take any seat you're comfortable with, and as I mentioned, just state your name for the record, Ms. Pulido, before you begin.
Okay. My name is Laura Pulido. I'm the landlord at the fourplex at 744 to 746 and a half South Woods Avenue.
Madam Hearing Officer, excuse me, I believe she does need to be sworn in now at this time.
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much.
So help me God.
Please go ahead. Thank you, County Council.
As I stated in the previous time I spoke here, I am very happy with my tenants as well. They've been there for many, many years, and I want them to continue being there. Now, the ordinance in place, and which I had mentioned to my tenants, makes it very difficult for me to go for any 1 year without raising their rent, because they've gone through episodes where for 4 years I didn't raise their rent. Because I didn't feel I needed to. I let it slip, and so what I told them is that for now on, because of the ordinance that's in place, I am not going to be able to go not one single year without raising their rent. Unfortunately, if it's 3% that I'm allowed, it's 3% that I'm going to raise. And I was the one that approached Alberto and told him that I'm never going to do anything that's not legal. I'm the one that stopped when I served him the letter of rent increase, and I realized that the ordinance had been extended. It wasn't just for the first 6 months that had initially been announced. When I realized that it had been extended, I told him I have to take back the rent increase. I'm not going to be able to legally raise the rent to where I wanted to bring it. I told him, I was the one that approached them and said that, because it's not legal for me to do this, but there is a resource that I can follow, and that's through the Department of Consumer Affairs. So I need them to know, and I've verbalized this to them, that because of the ordinance, every single year they should expect a rent increase. I think it makes it very hard for the landlords to have any flexibility, because it makes it hard for us to, especially when the rent has fallen way below what the market rate is. If they're paying, less than a single unit is paying for a 1-bedroom, it's difficult for us to continue allowing that. And obviously, I know that I wasn't allowed to have any additional permanent rent increase on top of the 3%. And I know that Ms. Lewis wanted to see certain paperwork, and there are operating expenses. No apartment rents for free. I keep my homeowner's insurance up to date, and I produced a lot of paperwork. But anyhow, they decided not to take any of that into consideration. So that was quite disappointing. It's a long process. It's very, very frustrating and tiring, and just I was ready to just give up on the whole system itself, because I felt so disappointed in it.
Thank you. I understand there's a lot of paperwork involved in the request to be able to raise more than the 3%. But when I look at the documentation, do you have the expenses for the base year water and property insurance and the pest control, and then the Edison utility?
I submitted the water bill in its entirety, to which I was informed over the phone by Ms. Lewis that was 100% acceptable.
All right, but what about property insurance, pest control, and the Edison utility?
I submitted paperwork on the termite. The termite company didn't list any what I paid. They just said, yes, we confirmed that Laura and Jose, my husband, have kept in termite coverage for all of these years, but they neglected to put the amount that had been paid. No company provides services for free, obviously. We all get paid for providing a certain service. And for Edison is was just not the easiest company to deal with over the phone, and nothing was available online for them. And they don't have an office where I could walk into. The water company, I was able to walk in and they gave me a printout on the spot. Edison, they don't exist physically. It's just over the phone. So I wasn't able to get any of that information. But at the end, it's just such a tiring process that I had
But getting back to the documentation, let's get back to the documentation. Property insurance.
Property insurance I carry. It's you have to as a landlord or land,
Ms. Polito, the question is the documentation to show what you paid in 2018 as opposed to what you paid in 2019.
I provided that information.
So that's what I'm asking about. I'm asking about
Yes.
the documentation. I understand it's a labor-intensive process.
I provided that information.
So, Ms. Lewis, could you comment on that, please?
Yes. So the property insurance that we received, we haven't disregarded what she's provided. What we do not have from her and what we've asked for repeatedly is that she provides us property insurance statements from September 2017 through July 2018. We've asked her on repeated occasions, and she's provided us from August 2018 and on. Related to the termite inspection, that has a $0 balance on it, so we can't see that or substantiate that the $400 that she's claiming that she's paid every year has been paid. Regarding the Edison utility, that was provided to us from March 2018 through December 2018, and of course that's lacking from the base year.
So you understand we're comparing 2018 to when you submitted your petition, which was 2019. Mm-hmm. And without complete documentation, without complete documentation of your expenses, whatever calculation DCBA goes through to see what you paid in base year 2018 as to what you were paying in 2019, they can't make a valid comparison to see whether or not your expenses have gone up so much you're not making a fair and reasonable return any longer. So without that complete documentation, they can't get an accurate comparison. Is there any way you can get the documentation?
I don't want to prolong this process. It's been exhaustive. It's been it's just nerve-wracking to just not have an answer. I had actually, I was going to go back to the tenants and tell them, forget the whole thing. This is ridiculous. The system is just so, it's like we can't work with this system, and maybe because it's new to them, they don't know. Anyhow, I'll just take whatever decision was made. Like Alberto said, everything legal I'm going to do. If this is what was decided, then that's what was decided, because I have a full-time job. I also didn't need to take time off work. I'm taking time off work, and dealing with downtown LA traffic and parking is just horrendous. It's a nightmare to be in downtown LA. So I'd rather not come back.
I don't blame you. The traffic is very challenging.
Oh my God, it's getting worse.
So, Ms. Lewis, do you have anything to add before I go through my discussion and decision?
Not at this time, no.
All right, thank you. The interim rent stabilization ordinance states that the petitioner has the burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that because of implementation of the ordinance, the landlord is unable to obtain a fair and reasonable return. There are two components to the petitioner's request here: the fair and reasonable return, which is related to the monthly rents and annual income and expenses, and then also the one-time capital improvement costs related to the air conditioning and the flooring. The documentation submitted by the petitioner, as reviewed by DCBA and myself, for the fair and reasonable return, unfortunately does not substantiate that the petitioner is entitled to a rent increase in excess of the 3%. That lack of documentation means that the petitioner has not met the burden of proving it. as defined by the ordinance. As far as the one-time capital improvement costs, the documentation submitted by petitioner as reviewed substantiates that the petitioner is entitled to recover capital improvement costs and that a 50% pass-through is reasonable as the landlord and tenant both benefit from the capital improvement. I would say that while this is a relatively new ordinance, the calculations that DCBA and I have gone through them myself, that they go through are relatively straightforward. What did you spend? What did you bring in? And what's the difference? I think this is also going to be a change for landlords such as yourself. It sounds to me like you do all of this on your own, that you are the management company as well as the accountant and a lot of things. You're not a 400-unit apartment complex on Wilshire that subcontracts all that out to professionals.
No, we're a little mom and pop shop. Just
absolutely. So this is also a learning curve for landlords such as yourself, that documentation is essential. If you feel that some year something's going to happen and you will need to raise the rents more than 3%. The capital improvement cost proof, that seemed like that was relatively simple. It's those monthly expenses that you have to track that, yes, will take more tracking to be able to make sure that all of the documentation submitted to DCBA is enough so that they can make the calculation to show, yes, her expenses really did go up a lot. The cost of water, went up 20%. So yes, we need to be able to allow her to charge more. So it's both sides need to get used to the new ordinance and perhaps a new way of operating.
I have a question. Was there no consideration taken into the fact that the rent market, what they're charging in the area for a one-bedroom apartment averages between $1,400 and $1,600 dollars in that?
The rent stabilization ordinances do not allow to look at market value. It is very narrow. It says, for these units, what did the landlord bring in and what did the landlord pay out in expenses? The ordinance does not allow a comparison for like units in the area. The ordinance does not allow it. So no consideration can be taken because the ordinance doesn't allow it.
That's very unfortunate.
That's how the ordinance is written.
At this point, they are paying less than you pay at a bachelor's.
Well, with this, then, unless you have anything else to add, Ms. Lewis?
I do not.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Given the evidence presented, I deny the fair and reasonable return request of the petition for relief for moratorium for case RSQ 19-07874. I affirm the one-time capital improvement costs pass-through request of the petition for relief for moratorium, case RSQ 19-07874. The petitioner may recover capital improvement costs of $36.38 per month for 120 months for the 2 units which received the air conditioning capital improvement and are subject to the rent stabilization ordinances. The petitioner may recover capital improvement costs of $7.91 per month for 84 months for the 3 units which received the flooring capital improvement and are subject to the rent stabilization ordinances. While the petitioner may raise rents by the percentage allowed by the ordinance, the combined rent and capital improvement pass-through shall not exceed 10%. The petitioner shall comply with all draft conditions listed on page 3 of staff's 27 January 2020 memo related to the capital improvement pass-through request, except for the following clarifications. For bullet number 4, it should read as follows. And the capital improvement pass-throughs shall be listed as separate line items on the monthly rental statement and not deemed as rent. And Ms. Polito, just so you know, my findings will include all of this in writing as well. So don't feel like you need to take shorthand right now. And you as well, Ms. Lewis. For bullet item 5, the capital improvement pass-throughs shall indicate an expiration date, not should, shall indicate an expiration date on the monthly rental statement. Bullet 6, the petitioner may increase rents by the allowable limit where allowed by the rent stabilization ordinances. Capital improvements shall not be calculated in the rent increase. My findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and my findings will include all of this information spelled out as well. Ms. Polito, do you understand the changes that I've directed be made? They're really just clarifications.
Yes, I do.
And Ms. Lewis, do you have any questions about those changes?
Not at this time.
All right. Then, again, my findings will be issued within 20 calendar days, and this item is concluded. Thank you very much, Ms. Polito. I appreciate it. Gracias, Senor Viramontes. And finally, we have item 8. Ms. Lewis, please proceed.
So this is for case number RSQ 1911184, which is Alex Hardy versus the tenants at 1114 through 1118 West 102nd Street, Los Angeles, California, 90044. The item is a petition for relief from moratorium to request a rent increase in excess of the allowable limit as established by the interim rent stabilization ordinance. The petitioner, Alex Hardy, owns the property located at 1114 through 1118 West 102nd Street, and the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs is requesting additional time for review and analysis of the supporting documentation provided by both the petitioner and respondents. We're requesting a continuance of the case to February 27, 2020.
Thank you. I do not have any speakers for this item. Therefore, I am not opening the public hearing. And to provide sufficient time for review and analysis of documentation, item 8, case RSQ 1911184 is continued to 27 February 2020. Moving on to the public comment period, I do not have any speaker cards for public comment, and there are no additional members of the public in the audience. Therefore, the DCBA hearing officer is adjourned to 10 a.m. Thursday, February 13th, 2020.